The silver spacecraft descended through Earth's atmosphere with barely a sound, landing on the designated field in northern Japan. Captain Jewry Park stood at attention, her Marine Recon unit positioned in a perfect line behind her. This was humanity's first official contact with an alien species. Despite her calm exterior, Park's heart hammered against her ribs. "Weapons check," she murmured into her comm. "All non-lethal, Captain," replied Sergeant Du Yunkong. "Just as ordered." The alien vessel's hull shimmered with strange patterns before a door materialized from what had appeared to be solid metal. Park took a deep breath and stepped forward as instructed by the diplomatic team. 3 figures emerged. The first stood nearly 7 feet tall with skin like polished copper and 4 arms. The second was shorter, blue-skinned with large, pupil-less eyes. The third appeared almost human except for the ridge of bone where eyebrows should be. "Captain Park," the translator in her ear buzzed. "We are representatives of the Solari Confederation. I am Ambassador Krell of the Tavizi. With me are Sub-Commander Loon of the Bree and Science Officer Nev of the Arden." Park bowed slightly. "Welcome to Earth. We are honored by your presence." The copper-skinned alien made a sound like water over stones. "Your species has progressed quickly from primitive tool users. Barely 2,000 years ago, you were still figuring out basic mathematics." Park kept her expression neutral despite the insult. "We're eager to learn from those with greater experience among the stars." The blue alien's eyes blinked sideways, a refreshing attitude. Most newly encountered species display more hostility. Over the next 3 days, Park and her unit escorted the Solari delegates to meetings with world leaders. She noticed how they studied human technology with what seemed like amusement, how they spoke in simplified terms as if to children. On the 4th day, everything changed. Park's unit was escorting the delegates to the United Nations when a small group of protesters broke through security. One man rushed toward the aliens, waving what appeared to be a weapon. Without hesitation, Park moved. In one fluid motion, she intercepted the man, disarmed him, and pinned him to the ground, all while positioning herself between the threat and the delegates. The weapon turned out to be a modified bullhorn. "Stand down," she ordered her team, who had formed a protective circle around the aliens. Security breach contained. When she looked up, the Solari delegates were watching with new interest. "Impressive reaction time," Sub-Commander Loon said. "And your threat assessment was correct. Your soldiers didn't fire despite the apparent danger." "My Marines are trained to protect, not to escalate," Park replied, helping the protester to his feet and handing him to local security. That evening, Ambassador Krell requested a private meeting with Park. "Your quick thinking prevented what could have been a diplomatic disaster," the ambassador said. "We've been observing your unit. Your tactics are unexpected." Park nodded. "Thank you, Ambassador. The Confederation has been monitoring Earth for some time. Your species is unusual, fragile compared to most, yet surprisingly adaptable and resilient." The ambassador's 4 hands moved in complex patterns. "We've seen your military exercises. You lack the strength of a Tavizi, the sensory abilities of a Brea, or the technological prowess of an Arden. Yet there's something about your approach to combat that interests us." Park kept her expression professional. "We work with what we have, Ambassador." "Indeed, the Confederation Council has authorized me to offer Earth provisional membership." Park blinked, surprised. This was far beyond her authority. "I'm honored, but I'm not authorized to." "Of course, your leaders have already been informed, but there is a condition." Krell's metallic eyes fixed on her. "All species that join the Confederation must prove their worth through the harrowing trials. Combat tests designed to evaluate a species' martial capabilities." "I understand." "No, Captain, I don't think you do." Krell's voice became somber. "No new species has ever completed the trials on their first attempt. Many fail multiple times before succeeding. Some never do." Park straightened her shoulders. "What happens if we fail?" "Earth would remain under Confederation protection, but without voting rights or access to advanced technology. It would be a lesser status. That evening, Park met with military leaders from around the world. The Solari had made their expectations clear. Humans would fail, proving they needed guidance and supervision. "They're underestimating us," Park said to the assembled generals and admirals. "I've seen how they look at us, like we're clever pets who've learned some tricks." Admiral Lee nodded. "The diplomatic corps believes this is intentional. They want us to fail." "Then we need to surprise them," Park replied. "I volunteer to lead our team." 2 days later, Captain Park stood before Ambassador Krell with 19 Marines behind her. "These are Earth's champions," the ambassador asked, 4 arms gesturing at the humans. "You have 3 months to prepare for trials that most species train years for." Park met the alien's gaze steadily. "We understand the challenge, Ambassador." "I doubt that," Krell replied. "But your confidence is admirable. Perhaps you'll survive long enough to gain some wisdom from the experience." As the ambassador walked away, Sergeant Kang moved to Park's side. "They really don't think much of us, do they, Captain?" Park watched the tall, 4-armed alien board their ship. "No, they don't. And that sergeant is going to be their mistake." That night, looking at the stars from the base window, Park felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The Solari thought humans were primitive, underestimating what they could do when challenged. They didn't understand what made humans different, not just their physical abilities, but their tenacity, their creativity under pressure. "They think we're going to fail," she whispered to herself. "They have no idea what humans are capable of when someone tells us something is impossible." In 3 months, the Solari would learn what it meant to underestimate humanity, and Captain Park would make sure it was a lesson they wouldn't forget. The Solari training facility orbited Earth like a small metal moon. Captain Jewry Park and her 19 Marines stared through the viewport as their shuttle approached. The structure was massive, with sections that seemed to shift and reconfigure even as they watched. "It's bigger than I expected," Lieutenant Taeho Kim said quietly beside her. Park nodded. "Everything about them is bigger than expected." The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. When the doors opened, they were greeted by Science Officer Nev, the most human-looking of the Solari representatives. "Welcome to the Crucible," Nev said. "This is where all species prove their worth or discover their limitations." The Marines followed Nev through corridors that seemed to stretch and contract as they walked. Park noticed how the gravity subtly shifted beneath her feet, how the lighting changed in ways that made her eyes strain. "This facility can recreate conditions from thousands of worlds," Nev explained. "It will test you in ways you cannot imagine." They entered a vast room where holographic displays showed alien species in various combat scenarios. Park recognized several of the Solari races, but others were completely foreign. Beings made of what looked like living crystal, creatures that seemed to phase in and out of visibility, entities that moved like liquid mercury. "These are recordings of previous trials," Nev said. "You may study them if you wish, though I doubt they will help you." Lieutenant Kim stepped forward. "Which species passed on their first attempt?" Nev's almost human face showed what might have been amusement. "None, Lieutenant. The fastest success came from the Arden, who completed the trials after their 3rd attempt, a process that took 14 of your Earth years." "And we have 3 months," Park said. "Yes." The council was generous. Nev gestured to another door. "Your quarters are through here. Training facilities are available at all times. Ambassador Krell will return in 1 week to evaluate your progress." After Nev left, the Marines explored their new home. The sleeping quarters were basic but comfortable. The training areas were equipped with technology they had never seen before. "What do you think, Captain?" Sergeant Kang asked as they gathered in the main room. Park looked at her team. The best Earth had to offer. "I think the Solari designed these trials to be impossible for humans," she said, "but they made one critical mistake." "What's that?" Kim asked. "They've never fought humans before," Park smiled slightly. And they've clearly never met Marines. The first week was brutal. The training simulations were unlike anything they had ever experienced. Gravity shifted unpredictably. Sensory inputs were manipulated to cause disorientation. Combat drones moved faster than human reflexes should be able to track. On the seventh day, Ambassador Krell arrived with a delegation of Solari officials. "Show us your progress," Krell demanded. Park led them to the main training arena where her Marines were running drills. The Solari watched as the humans tackled an obstacle course designed to exploit their biological weaknesses. "Interesting approach," said one of the officials as Corporal Ji-Hoo Choi completed a gravity-shifting maze in less time than any previous attempt, but ultimately futile. "The actual trials are far more demanding." "May we see recordings of the real trials?" Park asked. Krell seemed surprised by the request. "Why? You cannot possibly prepare adequately in the time you have." "Even so, we'd like to see what we're facing." After some discussion among themselves, the Solari agreed. They showed the humans recordings of previous trials, 5 increasingly difficult challenges that tested strength, speed, endurance, tactical thinking, and combat prowess. Park watched carefully, noting how each species failed in different ways. The Tavizi, with their 4 arms and incredible strength, struggled with agility-based challenges. The quick, sensor-equipped Brea faltered under sensory overload. Even the technologically advanced Arden failed when their equipment malfunctioned in extreme conditions. That night, after the Solari left, Park gathered her team. "I've identified patterns," she said. "The trials are designed to target each species' weaknesses, but they're based on assumptions about how those species will approach the challenges." Lieutenant Kim nodded. "They expect us to try to match their strengths." "Exactly, but we won't." Park pulled up a holographic display showing the trial arenas. "We'll leverage what makes humans different. Our endurance, our problem-solving under pressure, our ability to adapt tactics on the fly." For the next 2 months, they trained relentlessly. They studied the recordings of failed attempts, identifying the exact moments where other species made critical errors. They developed counterintuitive approaches to each challenge. When Ambassador Krell returned for a final evaluation before the trials, the Solari found the humans training in ways that made no sense to them. "Why are they running when the challenge involves strength?" one official asked, watching as Marines jogged for hours around the facility. "Why are they sleeping in shifts of only 4 hours?" another questioned. "Why do they practice fighting with such primitive techniques when they could use our combat simulators?" Park simply smiled. "We have our methods, Ambassador." Krell's metallic eyes narrowed. "Your species' overconfidence is remarkable, Captain. You still don't understand what you're facing." "Perhaps not," Park replied. "But neither do you understand what you're facing." The night before the trials were to begin, Park couldn't sleep. She found Lieutenant Kim in the observation room, staring at the stars. "Nervous?" she asked. Kim nodded. "The odds are against us, Captain. Even with all our preparation." "The odds have always been against humans," Park said, sitting beside him. "Our entire evolution was a series of impossible challenges. We survived an ice age with sticks and stones. We crossed oceans on vessels made of wood. We went to the moon in what amounted to a tin can with rocket engines." She gestured toward the vast darkness of space beyond the viewport. "The Solari think we're primitive because we haven't had their technology. They think we're weak because we don't have 4 arms or enhanced senses. What they don't understand is that our strength comes from overcoming limitations, not from avoiding them." Kim smiled slightly. "So we'll show them." "Yes," Park said, watching as Earth rotated slowly below them. "Tomorrow, we'll show them exactly what happens when you tell humans something is impossible." As she returned to her quarters, Park felt a calm certainty. The Solari had designed their challenges based on thousands of years of experience with dozens of species, but they had never encountered humans before. And they had no idea what that meant. Tomorrow, they would learn. Captain Park sat in the darkened viewing room, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. For the 5th time that day, she watched the recording of the Tavizi warriors failing the 3rd trial. The 4-armed aliens were immensely strong, able to punch through metal and lift objects 3 times their body weight. Yet they had collapsed from exhaustion halfway through the endurance test. "Play it again," she said, and Lieutenant Kim nodded, restarting the sequence. The rest of the Marine team was gathered around them, each studying different aspects of the footage. Sergeant Kang was mapping movement patterns. Corporal Min-Soo was timing the intervals between environmental changes. Private Jae-won was studying the physiological responses of the aliens. There, Park pointed as the lead Tavizi warrior stumbled. "They're built for explosive strength, not sustained effort. Their muscles generate enormous power, but burn through energy reserves quickly." Kim nodded. "Same pattern with the Brea. Their sensory systems are incredible for gathering information, but they can't filter input during overload." Park stood up and paced, her mind racing. The Solari designed these trials based on what they consider universal constants of combat, but their constants don't apply to humans the same way. She turned to face her team. "From now on, we train differently. We don't try to match their strengths. We exploit what makes humans unique." The next morning, Science Officer Nev arrived to observe their training and found the Marines engaged in activities that made no sense to him. "Captain Park," he called out, "why are your soldiers running in circles?" Park was jogging alongside Private Jae-won, both of them sweating but maintaining a steady pace. They had been running for over 2 hours. "Endurance training," she replied without stopping. "But the first trial tests reaction speed, not endurance," Nev said, confusion evident in his almost human features. "Every trial tests endurance if it lasts long enough," Park responded, completing another lap. Nev watched in bewilderment as other Marines practiced equally puzzling routines. Some were in pairs, one person blindfolded while the other guided them through obstacles using only taps on the shoulder. Others were solving complex puzzles while Lieutenant Kim shouted random numbers to distract them. "Your methods are unorthodox," Nev finally said. Park smiled. "That's the idea." Over the following weeks, the Marines refined their approach. They studied how each alien species had approached the trials and developed countermeasures based on human physiological advantages. "Humans aren't the strongest," Park explained to her team during an evening briefing. "We're not the fastest. We don't have the best senses. But we have 3 key advantages." She held up one finger. "First, we're persistence hunters. Our ancestors chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. No other species in the Confederation evolved that way." A second finger joined the first. "Second, we can function on minimal sleep for extended periods. 4 hours a night is enough to maintain combat effectiveness." She raised a third finger. "And third, we solve problems differently. We improvise. We adapt tactics on the fly." The Marines implemented training regimes that leveraged these advantages. They practiced making decisions while sleep-deprived. They ran for hours in varying gravity conditions. They formed pairs and teams that communicated with minimal signals. Ambassador Krell returned 2 weeks before the trials and found the Marines engaged in what appeared to be a chaotic exercise. Half the team was blindfolded, moving through an obstacle course guided only by drumming sounds made by their partners. "What is the purpose of this?" Krell demanded. Park, who was monitoring the exercise, turned to the ambassador. "We're training to operate when primary senses are compromised. By using primitive acoustic signals, why not use the neural interface simulators we provided?" "Because," Park said calmly, "we need to be able to function when technology fails." Krell's 4 arms moved in a pattern that indicated frustration. "Your species insists on doing things the hard way." "No," Park corrected. "We're doing things the human way." Later that day, Park found Nev studying recordings of their training sessions. "You've analyzed our trials extensively," Nev said without looking up. "You know the patterns, yet you're not preparing in ways that make sense." Park sat down across from him. Tell me, Nev, has any species ever tried an approach like ours? No, the alien admitted. Most focus on technological solutions or attempt to enhance their natural abilities to match the challenges. And they all failed their first attempts, Park pointed out. Nev looked at her with those almost human eyes. You truly believe you can succeed where others failed? I believe we can succeed precisely because we're not following their examples, Park replied. The trials were designed by beings who think like you, to test beings who think like you. We don't. 3 days before the trials, Park implemented the final phase of training. Sleep deprivation combined with tactical problem solving. The Marines operated on 2-hour sleep cycles, making complex decisions under increasingly difficult conditions. Private Jai-1 struggled more than the others, her reaction times slowing dangerously after 36 hours. I'm sorry, Captain, she said, frustrated after failing the simulation for the 3rd time. I can't think clearly anymore. Instead of criticism, Park handed her a puzzle box. Solve this. Jai-1 stared at it blearily. Now, I can barely remember my name. Exactly, Park said. You need to find solutions when your brain isn't working normally. Don't think linearly. Let your subconscious work on it. To everyone's surprise, Jai-1 solved the puzzle in minutes, using an approach none of them had considered. I don't even know how I did that, she admitted. You stopped overthinking, Park explained. Sometimes exhaustion breaks down mental barriers. On the eve of the trials, Ambassador Krell summoned Park to a final meeting. Tomorrow you face challenges that have broken species far more advanced than yours, Krell said. It's not too late to request additional preparation time. Park shook her head. We're ready now. Your confidence borders on delusion, Captain, Krell replied. Our scientists have analyzed your species thoroughly. Your biological limitations are well documented. These trials specifically exploit such limitations. Park smiled slightly. There's something your scientists missed in their analysis, Ambassador. And what might that be? Human history is the story of overcoming limitations, Park said. It's not just what we can do. It's what we do when we can't do something. We find another way. As she walked back to join her team, Park felt a strange calm. The Solari had created trials based on perfect information about biological capabilities and technological advancement. But they had missed something essential about humans, something that couldn't be measured in a lab or calculated by an algorithm. Tomorrow, they would learn. The first trial chamber loomed before them, a massive maze with gleaming metal walls that seemed to shift subtly even as they watched. Captain Park and her 19 Marines stood at the entrance in their basic training uniforms. No special equipment was allowed. The gravity labyrinth tests spatial awareness and inner ear function, announced the Solari judge, a tall Brea with deep blue skin. Gravity will shift unpredictably. Most species experience severe disorientation, nausea, and inability to navigate. Your goal is to reach the center and return. You have 2 hours. Lieutenant Kim glanced at Park. Just like we practiced, Captain. She nodded. Exactly like we practiced. As they entered the maze, the Marines immediately split into pairs as planned. The gravity shifts began almost instantly. One moment they were walking normally. The next they were falling sideways. Then suddenly the ceiling became the floor. In the observation room, Ambassador Krell watched with the other Solari officials. The shifting patterns should completely disrupt their vestibular systems, said a Tavisi scientist. Humans have particularly vulnerable inner ear mechanisms. Inside the maze, Sergeant Kang felt his stomach lurch as gravity pulled him sideways. Instead of fighting it, he went limp and rolled with the shift, using the momentum to carry him around a corner. His partner, Corporal Minsu, did the same. Wall running sequence in 3, 2, 1. Minsu counted down. When the next shift came, both Marines ran 3 steps up the wall before gravity changed again, launching them forward through a passage that would have been impossible to navigate otherwise. The Solari observers leaned forward in confusion. There, anticipating the shifts. One asked. Impossible, another replied. The patterns are random. But the humans weren't predicting the shifts. They were utilizing them. Where other species had tried to maintain stability, the Marines surrendered to the changing gravity, using each shift to propel themselves forward. They completed the maze in half the expected time. Unprecedented, the Bria judge said, clearly disturbed. We will proceed to the second trial. The sensory overload chamber was a featureless white room. When the doors sealed behind them, the Marines were hit with an assault on all senses: blinding lights, deafening sounds, overwhelming smells, and surfaces that change temperature and texture rapidly. This trial typically induces immediate distress, the judge explained to the observation room. Most species are incapacitated within minutes. Instead of fighting the sensory input, the Marines implemented their practiced response. They formed a circle, facing outward, each person placing one hand on the shoulder of the Marine beside them. Breath control now, Park ordered over the cacophony. 20 Marines began synchronized breathing, a technique they had practiced for weeks. Their focus narrowed to the tactile connection with their teammates and the rhythm of their breath. What are they doing? Krell demanded. Science Officer Nev studied the biometric readings. Their stress indicators are decreasing. They're blocking out the stimulus by focusing internally. The Marines moved as a single unit through the chamber, maintaining physical contact the entire time. When the lights became too bright, they closed their eyes and relied on touch. When the sounds became deafening, they responded to squeezes on the shoulder rather than verbal commands. They completed the trial in 43 minutes. No previous species had finished in less than an hour. Their approach is unconventional, the judge admitted. The third trial was the endurance course, a 5-mile track through environments that changed from Arctic cold to desert heat, from high altitude to underwater passages. This trial tests physiological limits, the judge explained. Temperatures and conditions exceed the survivable range for most species without protective gear. The Marines lined up at the starting point, dressed only in their standard uniforms. Pace yourselves, Park reminded them. Steady rhythm, conserve energy for the difficult sections. The Solari observers expected the humans to sprint through the coldest sections and struggle in the heat. Instead, the Marines maintained an unwavering pace regardless of conditions. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, Nev explained to the puzzled observers. They can maintain moderate exertion for extraordinary periods. When they reached the underwater section, other species had needed breathing apparatus. The Marines simply took deep breaths and swam under, using the buddy system to ensure safety. They're passing through environments that should cause hypothermia or heat stroke, a Solari medical officer noted with concern. Yet their core temperatures are stabilizing. The Marines completed the course with all 20 members intact, the first species ever to do so. The fourth trial was the tactical combat simulation. The Marines entered a vast arena where holographic enemies materialized around them, enemies with superior weapons, armor, and positioning. This tests strategic adaptation under overwhelming odds, the judge explained. The simulation adjusts to counter successful tactics. Previous species had attempted to outgun the simulated opponents or had sought perfect defensive positions. The Marines did neither. Asymmetric warfare pattern, Park commanded. Decentralize now. The Marines immediately broke into 5-person teams, each adopting different tactics simultaneously. One team created diversions, another focused on reconnaissance, the third and fourth attacked from different vectors, while the fifth maintained mobile reserve status. Every time the simulation adapted to counter one team's approach, another would exploit the resulting vulnerability. They're not fighting conventionally, Krell observed. They're fighting like humans, Nev finished. Their military history is dominated by asymmetric conflicts. They've developed tactics specifically for engaging superior forces. By constantly changing their approach and maintaining unpredictable patterns, the Marines completed the simulation in record time with minimal casualties. When they emerged from the fourth trial, the Solari observers were silent. The humans stood before them, tired but unbroken, ready for the final challenge. "You have performed unexpectedly well," the Bria judge admitted. "But the final reckoning is different. You will face living opponents, the Confederation's elite warriors." Park looked at her team. They were exhausted, some nursing minor injuries, but their eyes were clear and determined. "We're ready," she said simply. As they were led toward the final arena, Ambassador Krell approached Park. "Your species continues to surprise us, Captain," the ambassador said. "You've revealed weaknesses in trials we thought flawless." "Not weaknesses," Park corrected. "Just different assumptions. You designed these challenges based on how you would approach them. And tomorrow you face real opponents who can adapt to your methods," Krell warned. "Warriors selected from the finest combat units in the Confederation." Park nodded. "We look forward to meeting them." That night, as her Marines rested for the final trial, Park stood at the viewport, looking down at Earth glowing blue in the darkness. "We've shown them what humans can do," Lieutenant Kim said, joining her. "Whatever happens tomorrow." "Tomorrow we finish what we started," Park said firmly. "The Solari thought these trials would put us in our place. Instead, they've given us the chance to show exactly what our place should be." Kim smiled. "As equals." "No," Park replied, watching the stars. "As humans, different, but no less worthy of respect." The final reckoning arena stretched before them like a small city, buildings, tunnels, open areas, and dense vegetation creating a complex battlefield. Captain Park and her 19 Marines studied the terrain from their starting position, a simple concrete bunker at the southern edge. 30 opponents, Lieutenant Kim reported after checking the mission briefing. Mixed species teams with full combat gear. They have energy weapons, personal shields, and combat exoskeletons. Park nodded. "And what do we have?" "Standard kinetic weapons, basic body armor, and these," Sergeant Kang said, holding up a simple communication device, "plus whatever we can find in the arena." The Marines checked their gear one final time. In the observation center high above, ambassadors and military leaders from the 7 Confederation species gathered to watch. "The humans have performed admirably in the previous trials," Ambassador Krell admitted to the Solari High Command. "But this is different. They face our best warriors with significant technological disadvantages." The starting horn sounded, echoing across the arena. "They're expecting us to hide," Park said to her team. "Standard tactics would be to find defensive positions and try to survive as long as possible." She smiled. "So we attack." The Marines moved out in a coordinated sprint, not toward cover, but directly across the central plaza. The Solari observers watched in confusion. "What are they doing?" a Tavizi general demanded. "They're exposing themselves completely." Science Officer Nev leaned forward. "They're changing the tempo of the engagement." On the battlefield, the human advance caught the alien warriors by surprise. The Confederation forces had spread out, expecting a prolonged hunt for the outmatched humans. "Squad 1 and 2, create chaos," Park ordered through the comm. 3 and 4, secure objectives." The Marines broke into their assigned teams. 8 of them began creating diversions, setting small fires, triggering alarms in buildings, and generally making as much noise as possible on the eastern side of the arena. Meanwhile, Park led the remaining 12 in a quiet infiltration toward the western command centers. An armored Tavizi soldier spotted one of the diversion teams in charge, his 4 arms wielding advanced energy weapons. Private J1 stood her ground until the last second, then dropped flat as Corporal Minsu fired from a flanking position. Their kinetic rounds couldn't penetrate the alien's armor directly, but they targeted the joints of the exoskeleton with precision. The Tavizi soldier fell, his systems temporarily disabled. "They're focusing on vulnerabilities rather than trying to overpower us," a Bria commander noted with concern. In the western sector, Park's team located the first command center. 2 Arden warriors guarded it, their sensor arrays scanning for threats. Sensory overload, Park whispered. 3 Marines activated the devices they had secretly constructed during their preparation time. Simple but effective noise and light generators using components from their communication devices. When activated simultaneously, they created a disorienting blast of stimuli. The Arden warriors' enhanced senses worked against them, overwhelming their neural processors. Before they could recover, Park's team had disabled them and secured the command center. "They're using our strengths against us," Nev observed, "just as they did in the trials. Half their forces are still active," Krell pointed out, "and they're converging on the humans' position now." In the arena, Park received reports from all teams. The diversion had worked. They had secured 2 command centers and disabled 12 enemy combatants. But the remaining Confederation forces were now coordinating, adapting to human tactics. "Phase 2, Park ordered. The Marines immediately split into even smaller units, 10 pairs spreading across the arena. Each pair carried different objectives, different tactics, and different routes. "What are they doing now?" the Tavizi general demanded. "Decentralizing command," Nev replied. "No central point of failure." On the battlefield, the Confederation warriors struggled to predict human movements. As soon as they adapted to one tactic, the humans switched to another. When they expected aggression, the humans went defensive. When they prepared for defense, the humans attacked. Lieutenant Kim and Sergeant Kang found themselves cornered by 3 Brea warriors with advanced shielding. Instead of fighting directly, they retreated into a narrow maintenance tunnel. "Their shields won't work in here," Kim said. "Too close quarters." When the Brea followed, they found themselves unable to maneuver effectively. Their technological advantage became a hindrance in the confined space. Throughout the arena, similar scenes played out. The Marines exploited terrain features, used